everyone, Steve from Backcountry Gallery here. This time around, let's answer the question, does cropping make your photos noisier? But before we do, please note that we're only covering the single aspect of cropping in this video, just the noise aspect. Check out my article, The Cropping Epidemic, for even more info and other cropping consequences. I'll put a link in the card above and in the description area on YouTube. So, does cropping make your photos noisier? The answer, well, yes and no. To demonstrate these concepts, I shot a series of images of this little fake cardinal with my Z7 and 70-200 2.8 at different focal lengths, all using the exact same exposure. And yes, I know, this is about the worst likeness of a cardinal anyone has ever seen. But anyway, to make our noise comparisons, we're going to look at the grassy area of the photo and compare those. Naturally, we'll see more detail in the subject if it fills more of the frame, as well as seeing better subject isolation. But again, for this video, we're going to keep the conversation more centered around noise. First, let's look at things from strictly a pixel level point of view after cropping the two more distant cardinals for the same field of view as the frame filler. I'm going to slice out a small section of each image in about the same place so we can compare them side by side. Now, to no one's surprise, these all look the same. After all, they were all shot at the same ISO, shutter speed, and f-stop, and there was no resizing. At the pixel level, noise will look the same, as you can see in these examples. However, we don't show our photos at the pixel level, we show them as well photos. When we do this, we have to output them to something, some format, either maybe something like a JPEG for viewing on a screen or as a print. When we output our images, we almost always adjust the size, and that's where we can see a difference in noise between a cropped image and one that was not cropped and that utilized the full sensor area. Basically, we're talking about comparative output between a version of the scene that used the entire sensor versus one that was cropped to the same field of view. So let's go back to our sample images. This time, I'm going to pretend I'm outputting to a print and I want to crop our more distant photos so they match the frame filler as far as field of view. Now that every image is cropped to the same field of view, let's resize them for a 24:16 print at 200 ppi. This will show us the comparative output noise at 24:16 for each version of the image. Now, let's take a slice from each image and we'll compare again. As you can see, there is a significant difference in noise between the three. The frame filler, of course, looks the best. The moderate crop is about a stop and a third worse, and the heavy crop is at least 2 or 3 stops worse for the same 24:16 output. In short, if you were printing a 24:16, there's little question you'd want the uncropped version. So why is this happening if the noise is the same at the pixel level? Simple, we're resizing for output, and the more information we start with, the better that output is. For the frame filling version, we actually had more information than needed for the 24:16 output. Downsampling always reduces the noise and improves the way ISO appears at pixel level, and we saw that benefit with our example. The moderately cropped version was just about the right size, so it didn't get the benefit from downsampling. On the other hand, the heavily cropped version actually required up-resing to get to 24:16, essentially magnifying the noise. The important thing to remember here is that for a given sensor, this is always going to happen when you crop. It doesn't matter what type or size of sensor or even what kind or size of output. Some people think that if you're just posting on the web, then heavy crops are just fine. But you can even see a difference when outputting to small JPEGs. Here's the frame filling version of the image at web size compared to the heavily cropped version. Both were downsampled, but because the frame filling version started with way more information in the file, it was downsampled more, and it appears far less noisy than the heavily cropped version. Of course, theory is nice, but what's the field application here? Now, before we get to field application though, just a quick reminder that if you're enjoying this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and get notified so you never miss a post. You're not going to want to miss the next video either. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. You'll be glad you did. Okay, field technique. First, always try your best to fill the frame. I often see people not using enough focal length or simply not getting close enough when it's completely possible to do so. I think part of the problem is that with all the really high-res cameras on the market, it's really tempting to just crop instead of using longer lenses or getting closer. However, you can see there is a noise penalty for this, as well as a penalty for detail and subject isolation, but I think that's a topic for another video. What if you have no choice and you absolutely have to crop? The short version is if you think you're going to have to crop, do everything possible to drop your ISO. Although you still won't get the same level of subject detail as an uncropped image, at least what detail you do grab is going to be way cleaner. In fact, there's even a formula to help with this. It's the effective crop factor squared multiplied by the ISO. Since no sane person in the world wants to do math in the field, here's a little chart that'll get you in the ballpark and give you an idea of how much an effective ISO increase you'll see for a given crop versus filling the frame for a comparative output size. Note that the more you have to crop, the faster that noise piles up. Naturally, you can't always drop your ISO, especially if the shutter speed or f-stop is critical for an image. However, it's equally true that there are plenty of times when you actually can open the lens more or you can drop that shutter speed. In fact, if it's possible, grabbing a tripod or monopod and lowering your shutter speed can make a huge difference in the noise level and the consequential quality of your photos. In fact, here's that same 24x16 at ISO 3200 for the full frame image and ISO 1250 for the moderately cropped version of it and ISO 640 for the heavier crop, and you can see that all the noise levels are about within a third of a stop of each other. I just had to drop the shutter speed and use a lower ISO. In short, the more you have to crop, the lower the ISO you should use, or conversely, the more you fill the frame, the higher ISO you can get away with. Anytime I'm in the field and I know I'm facing a heavy crop, I do everything in my power to keep ISO as low as possible, and I use the chart as a guideline for how much lower I should try for. I can't always get there, but any little bit is going to help. Finally, there may be times a shot just isn't going to work out, and knowing how cropping affects comparative output noise can help you make that decision. For instance, maybe I'm looking at a subject that will absolutely require a heavy crop back home, one that will make my comparative output ISO look about maybe 3 stops worse. If I'm already at ISO 6400, I know the output noise will look like ISO 50,000 or so in a situation like that. And if I can't somehow get closer or lower my ISO, I might move on and just look for a better subject instead of wasting time with something that's never going to work out. By the way, these are the kind of topics that are covered in my Exposure and Metering for Nikon book. Not only does that book explore every aspect of exposure and metering, but it dives deep into field application to help you get the most from every single shot. Check it out and join the thousands who already apply the tips and techniques in that book to get better shots each time they're out. Finally, make sure you stop by the site and sign up for my free email newsletter so you never miss a video, book, post, workshop, or other cool opportunity. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.